Do you want to make it? Do you want to fulfill your dreams, your ambitions, your out-of-reach goals? Do you want to know the right tools for success? Well, you've come to the right place. See, I had this great idea which impacted millions, if not billions, around the world. And it all started with this: my mind. I gave them the guidelines, I showed them the way. I taught them how to think and grow rich. And how did they treat me? They called me a conman, a get-rich-quick schemer, a liar. They all mocked me, they laughed at me, they scorned me, and most didn't do anything with my advice. They just read it or heard it and just left it for what it is, thinking it was random words from a man drunk on his own ideals. But what they didn't know was that I was different, and I believe you're different. You're different because you actually care. You're different because you actually care about your current and future self. You're different because you're actually here. You're different because unlike most of them that didn't do anything, you'd actually make a difference. And if you stick with me on this short journey, I will show you how I did it and how you can too. Or you might just end up seeing me for what they say I am: a masterful scam artist. It's October 26th, 1883, and the world is pale and in black and white. Doctors are all around me as they try to severe the cord and secure my life. This is the start, and I guess color hasn't been invented yet. They named me Napoleon, a very odd name. I guess they liked the way Napoleon Bonaparte changed the world indefinitely. I thought I would grow up to do the same. And they were right. Anyway, I was born in a one-room cabin near the Appalachian town of Pound in southwest Virginia and had a pretty normal childhood. We were poor and to some degree had a pretty sensible life. Not until my mom died and my world changed as I saw it. You see, my mother was my saving grace, and when she passed, well, what else was I living for? I became wild, went to parties, hooked up, and that would later lead to my first marriage. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we? So at the age of 9 I lost my mom, and almost 2 years later my dad remarried. Not like I could complain, but come on, 2 years? The woman was pretty nice and had a very unusual energy around her. She was a teacher at a school. I can't really remember the name, but she helped me the best she could, offered me advice, lifted my spirits on particularly bad days, and loved me as best she could. And naturally, I listened to her to some degree. So one day she came to me with this particularly absurd idea. Apparently she's been noticing my art and thought I had this imaginative brain. She said she wanted me to channel some of this energy into something more creative. Creative? I asked her, and she replied with writing. At first I couldn't understand the idea of leaving such a frivolous life behind for a career, let alone writing. But after a bit of persuasion, nagging, and maybe a little bit of blackmail, I began to see the point. Maybe there's more to life after all. So I traded my beloved 6-shooters for a typewriter, and that's how my story began as the greatest self-help advisor of all time. So at the age of 13, I started working for my father's paper, earning what little money I could, pulling strings, doing manual jobs, and growing my career, all in the hopes of entering law school one day. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed by now, but my name is Napoleon Hill, the guy that your local would-be entrepreneur, YouTube lifestyle coach, or Instagram lifestyle coach, and empty motivational coach guy adores. That Napoleon Hill. After nearly getting sucked in a marriage at the age of 15, I finally graduated high school and got to go to business school when I was 17. Finished it, got offered a job by Rufus Ayers, a local coal magnate and former Virginia Attorney General. Well, actually I didn't get the job offer, I kind of forced it on him. You see, some manager working at the mine had accidentally shot a bellhop. A black bellhop, mind you. And he promised that if I kept my mouth shut, I could get a job. And well, shut it was. The job was fine and all that, but eventually I would move on to something more, let's say, interesting. I went to law school for a bit, had to quit because, no money, doesn't matter though. The title was what I came for, and even though I didn't really get it, I gladly used it. Attorney of Law. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? It was a nice addition to my resume, and even though I didn't finish the semester, I earned it. After a while in the management business, I relocated to Mobile, Alabama, where I co-founded this lovely lumber business called Agree Hill Lumber. I know, not the finest of names, but it served its purpose. I was able to not only unlock the secrets to $1 million lumber business, but I also opened up connections outside the county. You see, the plan was to buy on credit, probably 10-20 grand worth of lumber from various suppliers across the country every half year or so, and then sell them well below the market price to other retailers. The idea was brilliant, no one even suspected a thing, but soon enough the suppliers started getting suspicious. You see, I didn't pay them, and the bank caught hold of my bluff. Luckily, this time I was able to make it out alive to explore other more, profitable ventures. After leaving the lumber business, I found out about this great opportunity in the automobile industry. I really don't know why anybody hadn't thought of it, but that's just more great news to me. With the help of me and myself alone, I launched the Automotive College for Washington. My college was not unlike the other ones. With the little token at the entry fee, you would have one of the finest teachers tutoring you on being an expert in assembling cars, chauffeuring, and graduating with the promise of earning not less than 10 grand a year. It was an amazing opportunity, wasn't it? I mean, who wouldn't love this opportunity? Well, not everyone apparently, because the Automobile magazine not only accused me of fraud, but also called all my marketing materials a joke. You see, they all thought that I was swindling my students by forcing them into doing free labor, working for this assembling car company downtown. I mean, couldn't they see it was just a practical class? You can't teach these students all theory, you need real life applications too. But no, they called my craft insulting and pushed again to shut me down. Following my little dabblings in the automobile business, I met my first love, Florence Elizabeth Holmes, and she was fine piece. We fell in love, married and settled down, and everything seemed to go fine for a minute. We had 3 sons, James, Napoleon, Blair and David. Things were going pretty well, even after the automobile business folded. Soon after, I ideated to establish an advertising institute. This time, I intended to teach principles of success and self-confidence, which was going to be called the George Washington Institute of Advertising. This kickstarted my love for philosophy, investment and, money. And soon, I couldn't stay cooped up in Virginia anymore. I had to leave the state if I ever wanted to make a name for myself. I told my wife there was something more for me than little magazines and business ventures. I had to go out into the world and actually live. She didn't understand, and neither did our children. We argued about this for a long time until I decided to leave. Either way, it was a painful goodbye, but a necessary one nonetheless. If I could go back and redo everything again, I still make the same decision. Out of that little town and into the world, I found myself in Chicago. I clearly believed that the secrets to my future lay in one thing: schools. I mean, what better way to build fortunes? Students, obviously, than an institute designed to empower the youth with the knowledge, resources and intuition to grow big and get rich trying. It was a hard task, but I was able to get it done. Soon, in September 1915, I started the George Washington Institute, with a loan that may or may not have come from my wife's family, but who cares about the little details? I finally did it, didn't I? Is this where my story ends? I finally achieved the dream of teaching students about self-confidence and riches. Isn't this where I stop? No, it's not. Stop? There was no stopping. I wanted more influence, more power. I didn't stop here. I sold the Institute stocks for a fat $10 per share and gave myself 51% of the stock. I was in the money. My student bought, strangers bought, people in power bought, and I was finally living the life I dreamed of. Not until another warrant from the bank sent me spiraling again. I was charged again for fraud. How could I have known that the institute wasn't worth up to 100 grand? After an investigation from the bank, they appraised the company at, get this, $1,200, and I was charged with violating the Illinois Blue Sky Law. I had to pay $200,000 bond, barely all the money in my bank, this time even worse than the last. No one understood me and my art. My idea is just a swindling scam to many, my preaching's a lie, and my articles a blatant tale. They didn't understand the art of a forceful writer, the exceptions, intricacies, and inspirations needed to produce my craft. It was all a hot mess. Things were really bad. I was dead broke, living on pennies, imagine a whole me, and yet I had to survive. While still trying to pick up the pieces, I was approached by the president. It was like a dream come true. My skills were finally getting the acknowledgement they deserved, respected and adored for what it was. I was offered thousands, if not millions for my services, and what did I do? I turned it all down. Who in their right mind would actually take money from the president? It was unheard of, unpatriotic. But I worked regardless, earnestly, regardless of the duration of the service. During this time, I worked as a consultant, providing the president advice on some fire talk drills. I was even there in the negotiations with the Germans, wouldn't you believe it? That day, the room was tense. I could literally feel the air in the room as it shifted. The president looked pale as he decoded the messages, his voice shaky and in shock as he read the letter. He handed the documents to me as soon as he was done and left the room in a rush, as if signaling for my advice. He was gone for a good 15 minutes, and in these minutes my mind raced. Is this how the Germans intended to treat us? And as soon as he was back, he handed me a couple of sheets of paper, on which he had written his reply to the Germans. The paper ended with 3 questions, all relating to an armistice. It was tough, and I could see it was a tough decision. Nevertheless, he asked for my advice, and with grace in all my heart I suggested a 4th question. And it would ask whether the request for an armistice was made on behalf of the German people or the warlords. And that itself was a question the president replied himself, and I'd love to go into the greater details, but I wouldn't want to indulge in the sensitive matters of the state. My time with the president was fun, insightful, and a necessary building block for my eventual meeting with a man that would later change the course of my life, Andrew Carnegie. A simple interview that should have lasted 3 hours, lasted 3 days, and eventually a lifetime. Andrew Carnegie was what you could describe a billionaire. Probably the richest man then. He was intelligent, powerful, and knowledgeable. And nothing prepared me for what I was about to hear in this interview. Soon after it began, I knew that it was not going to be a normal interview. He was intellectual, and I knew that if I didn't indulge in this opportunity, I'd be lost forever. He offered me a proposal. He asked me in return for working for no salary for 20 years. He'd provide me the skills, opportunities, and knowledge to determine the principles of success. Who'd say no to such a request? It was insane, and I knew my life was about to change. Over the course of these years, I met with over 200 millionaires, all famous, influential people, to determine their mindset on the principles of success. Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham, Henry Ford, and Charles M. Schwab. Those were just a few of the men I met in this lifetime. And through their interviews, I was able to learn the principles, skills, and mindsets that would guarantee success. And I wrote these findings in a book, which led to my first bestseller, Think and Grow Rich. And this inspired thousands, if not millions. And I finally achieved my dream. A wonderful end to the greatest, let's say, artist of the century. And whether I actually met the president or Andrew Carnegie, who cares? Alright guys, thank you, and that's all the time we have for today. Were you inspired by my story? Then click the little bell icon and subscribe to see more videos like this. Thank you, and I will catch you all later.